The previous one was a great introduction because this is also about space. Flashback to 1988. I was a graduate student at studying planetary geology. And every year we would have this small conference with a Russian institute, the Vernadsky Institute. And this was my third time I'd gone to Moscow to be at this conference. And 1988, if you're old like me, you remember that was when the old Soviet Union was falling apart. Gorbachev was in charge, but it was pretty clear that they could no longer continue what they were doing. And everybody that we were interacting with in the Vernadsky Institute was looking for an exit. They wanted to get the hell out of Russia because they knew things were going to be bad. Now, I was just this lowly graduate student, but I had this good friend, and we'll call him Scott. And Scott was the assistant to the guy who was organizing the conference on our side. And so the Russians thought that he was important. And what happened, the way these conferences work is you go to Moscow, and on Sunday night you have a big reception, and you eat Russian food and drink vast amounts of vodka. Every time I think of these things, my liver shudders. Because it's impossible not to drink a lot. And I haven't been able to face vodka since. Anyway, so we're at this reception. We've had a few vodkas. And Scott, I should describe this guy. He is a 6'6" hulking, shy, mound of shyness. A good Catholic boy from Massachusetts, and an extremely awkward and self-conscious person, and a wonderful human being, a good friend. But very awkward around people in general and women in particular. A classic nerdy scientist. And what happened was that this really beautiful, leggy blonde in a tight dress, who was a PhD in physics, comes up to him and starts flirting outrageously. And he just doesn't know what to do with it about this. And she just would not let him alone. And it became apparent after a couple of days when she just kept coming after him, that she had decided that he was her ticket out of Russia. And she would be throwing herself at him. And there was one time, and I'm witness to this whole thing. And so I'm standing next to him, and she comes up to him and says, "Oh, you look so tired. Why don't you come over to my apartment and rest? And then you can come back to the conference in the afternoon." And I elbowed him and said, "Scott, are you crazy? Go for it." I was a married man at that time, so I didn't mind giving him lots of advice that I wouldn't take myself. Anyway, she keeps after him. He keeps stepping away. I keep egging him on to no avail. And on Wednesday, we have a banquet. And she sat down next to him and continued to flirt and fawn and make suggestive offers. And finally, Scott looked at her and said, "Look, I'm not interested. Leave me alone. I don't want to have anything to do with you. I'm a good Catholic boy. I'm going to marry a good Catholic woman. Just leave me alone." He gets up, walks out of the banquet. And this is literally a big banquet table, and I'm sitting next to them, witness to this whole thing. And she looks downcast for a little bit, and then looks up and looks across the table at another member of our party who is this middle-aged, nerdy guy from a big NASA center. And she says, "Hello, my name is Natasha. What is your name?" And after a half an hour, they're gone. I don't see them again for 2 more days. When we all leave, Tom, this guy, just sort of shambles out and gets on the airplane, just looking totally wrecked. And fast forward 12 years. I'm at this major NASA center working on a space mission. And I end up standing behind this woman who looks vaguely familiar. And she introduces herself as Natasha. And she turns around and looks at me and says, "Do I know you?" I said, "Oh, I don't think so. I don't think we've ever met." But I was privileged to be around when these two first met each other over the table at this banquet. And so I tell this story, and the nice thing is I can't tell it around any of my colleagues.